What do you think makes a meaningful career?
What is the difference? Why you prefer coaching over mentoring? How do we distinguish ourselves from the pack? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. You know?
And oftentimes our hands have to get dirty. What could be the best outcome for this situation? I'm Michael.
I'm Regine.
And this is Gears in Motion.
Thank you. Thank you. One thing I've noticed,
Yeah.
and I think we've broached the subject before, your generation, you use the word coaching.
Yeah.
You use mentoring. So tell me the difference. What is the difference? Why you prefer coaching over mentoring? And
Yeah.
also, is that the way to, for some of us who are of the older generation to really get to the heart of the younger generation that's coming afterwards?
That's interesting. I didn't even recognize I was doing that. But I think what's interesting, Regine, is, at least in my thinking in this moment, coaching to me oftentimes is short spurts. There's a defined season. Okay. Mentoring tends to be like longer term, and I'd love to keep everyone for every season, but we just know that's not practical and that's not healthy. But oftentimes you're in a sphere of influence for a certain time, and you are able to make an impact for a season. Basketball season is 4 months, 3 months. Mentoring, I think, and it just depends. And sometimes I think even those terms can be used interchangeably, but recognizing where you're cross-secting people and how long that's going to be and what they need. One of the things I thought about early on in a couple of years back is, when I was in my current place, in my current stage of life, I just moved out of my parents' place, and I was looking for a new church and starting a new job. That's something else too. Don't ever change all three of those things at the same time. Change relationships, locations, jobs, and community all at the same time. That is a recipe for disaster. I've done 3. I think I've done 3 of those before, maybe 2, 3, I think. But changing multiple variables of your life at one time is tough. But anyways, going back to coaching and mentoring, I asked myself, what does it take to be a mentor? What makes a good mentor? And I think there's 2 things. There's the perception that someone is farther along in a specific area than you. Because oftentimes people want an all-in-one mentor, and nobody is that perfect, and ain't nobody got time to give you all of them. To give you all of them. But I think oftentimes there's an opportunity where you're able to say, hey, I can help you for a season, or there's one specific aspect that I recognize you could use some guidance in. And I think understanding that and understanding the impact that you can make there is critical. And so I think coaching, because there's kind of a set defined period, I like that term a lot better because there's some parameters around it. People are more likely to define it in an appropriate way. Mentoring people, I have mentors that I don't talk to every week, but I'll call them once around Christmas time or whatever, and it's just like, hey, how's it going? But then there's also my crisis line where I'm like, hey, I'm dealing with this. Can you help me? Like, I've got a very specific problem right now. Like, I need you to pick up. I don't need you to throw me to voicemail. Like, we got to talk about this. And then there's, certain seasons. Every time I've made a job switch, I've consulted my board of directors, and I've gotten a very thorough kind of counsel around that. And I think that's important. And you have to recognize who's at the table and who's available to be at the table, because not always are they the same people that are at the table may not always be available, but you want people that are available, are going to be faithful, and are going to be honest for you. But what do you think? What do you think? Where do you think that difference is between coaching and mentoring, if there is any?
I think if done right, mentoring probably could be interpreted as coaching, because there is also the work that coaches do outside of the basketball season too.
True.
That's important as well. I think coaching is probably doing more to bring out of people what they already have inside of them and they don't realize, and you really helping them to come to acknowledge and actually understand the strengths they have and maybe some of the weaknesses, and then how to really work with that, how to enhance your skills, improve upon your skills. More so than mentoring, where I think that if done according to really the definition of mentoring, I'm there here step by step, kind of teaching you certain things and how to move ahead and how to, I've seen it done like that. I've never quite agreed with that, because I think that, and I think I've mentioned to you before that I've learned as much from my mentees as they've learned from me, right? And sometimes in life they become the mentors.
It works both ways. I mean, I've seen
ways.
some old fools, and I've seen some young wise folks, and I've seen everything in between. And if we're honest with ourselves, we've been both of those people at certain seasons of our lives.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So I think that's what it is. I think the coaching is also responsible to really help you to acquire some of those skills and make you strong.
Agreed.
And make you strong.
Agreed.
So we'll see. So maybe it's a better word. It's a generational thing. The word is more appropriate than it is now, because I think there is something that I've noticed, that some people don't even like the word to be called a mentee.
Oh, everyone's a mentee. They may not want to recognize it, but everyone is taking lessons from somebody. And whether you like it or not, someone is probably taking lessons from you. Let's hope they're picking up the good stuff.
Yeah.
Let's hope they're picking up the good stuff and not the bad stuff. Yeah.
So how do you hone your skills? How do you keep current?
That's a good question. During the pandemic, it's been a lot of fun to just listen to a lot of podcasts and soak a lot of knowledge up. I've been able to listen to virtual conferences completely online with my headphones plugged in while I'm working. And that's been fun. Oftentimes I'll try to maximize those in between moments. So like cooking, can I turn on audio cast? Can I turn on a sermon? This is probably not a good thing to admit to, but it's true. Sometimes you can even be on a meeting and listen to another meeting at the same time. You take one ear in and one ear out, and I love doing that. That's particularly if it's something that I feel like I don't have a speaking role. I can just kind of listen in to, get the key markers for, and then listen to something else on the side. I love simulcasting at the same time, and just kind of getting an understanding there. I love to read. I do not, I don't know if you know this, but I don't have a TV. I purposely not bought a TV. I have not had a TV for the last 7 years. In the place where I have my TV, I have books. And so I try to make that the more natural thing I reach for. Mm-hmm. LinkedIn is really, really good for trying to understand news and current event snippets that are in easy grabbable chunks. My company offers Coursera and Udemy access. So I have taken a couple of items through there. Trying to think. I feel like, if you just the natural curiosity and throngs of life oftentimes present opportunities to learn something and to connect. I feel like I'm always trying to figure out, how does this connect to this? And one thing I started doing at this job I'd never done before, is I created a word dictionary. So every time I encounter a new word, particularly that's related to the field, I have a running Word document with, this means that. Obviously, when you write things down, when you type things out, you're more likely to remember. And I think that's huge. Anything else? Yeah, I think whatever whatever material I can get my hands on. I'm the type of person that really likes to read. So terms and conditions for like signing up for a new account for somewhere, or even junk mail, I generally read it. I just like to read. So
say that too many places love sending junk mail. It
they
might
love
be
saying junk mail, but I think what I'm
yes.
always looking
I'm sorry.
for.
I just
No, you're good. No, what I'm always looking for is I love words. And so oftentimes I'm looking for words or looking for turns of phrases that people use. And I'm looking to say, how can I incorporate that into whatever I've got going on? So sometimes I do a poor job of that. And so I just end up misusing words. But at the same time, it ends up being really interesting to read things that kind of inform the world that you're living in.
yes, I understand that. No, I subscribe to Word Genius.
Oh, really?
So every day on my email, I receive like a word that is not used like it's not a popular word that is used in
Sure.
language, but also so I actually love that because I took Latin for 5 years,
Oh, really?
and so in French, etc. So I like to go back to the roots, of words and things like that. So
Nothing's new. It's all borrowed.
it's all borrowed. There is nothing new. And so I do that, almost every day when I have time, but sometimes I go to a few of them at the same time. So yeah.
Wow.
So I understand that. I think curiosity is something that's something that I think keeps you young. I looked at my grandmother was the example of that. She always kept young because she was always curious about
Always curious. That's awesome.
always curious. So right now, who influences you? Who do you look up to now, and who influences you?
Ooh, that's there's so many people that I look up to for a number of reasons. So the Christian, so I feel like that's the thing I read the most. I read my Bible every morning, and that is the most transformative thing I think I can do. And so, looking up to Jesus, the hero of the faith. But I think even um, more kind of practically, kind of in terms of just people that I know and love, that I get to see on a somewhat regular basis. And I think like this is where it's really important to have a strong local network, because you can only look at some people from so far, right? One of the people I love, so my mom is the most thoughtful person. And so she's really good at thinking about and identifying what other people like. And so she's someone that I look up to in that aspect. I love surprising people. I get that element from her, particularly when it comes to whether it's serving them or getting them something. Like I love doing that. And then I love, so that's the first person that always pops to mind, and she's influenced a lot of how I operate now. So that's one person for sure. I think other folks that I look up to. I think of one gentleman that I know who's super unselfish with his time. That's, to be honest, that's one leadership characteristic I love. Some of the people I've been most impressed with is they're giving of their time. That's the most valuable resource that they have. And maybe they're only doing it while they see me, but I'm always very impressed with, I feel like, how they operate within their time and are willing to give that. And I can think of one gentleman in particular that's very much that way. I think, Regine, when I think about folks' stick-to-itiveness, when I think about folks that are, Regine, I think about some of the conversations we've had. I think about how forthright, but I think even more how just driven I think about in how you drive things forward. Like, and I feel like you drive things forward and you do it in a fun way. I'm going to tell you what, there's people that know how to get stuff done, but then it's just like dull cut and dry and boring. And you're just like, oh, we're going to go through this, but it's not going to be fun. You drive things in a fun way. And I like your sense of humor. I think is really funny. I think it's really something I appreciate in the time that we spend together. I think, whew, I think of another guy that I can think of now. Gary. Gary is very just joyous. One of the things you want to make life fun, and I think oftentimes you end up looking up to people where you feel like you're deficient or you lack. And then I think that's a good, healthy, self-aware thing to do is figure out, okay, here's some things that I like. Let me find somebody and hang out with somebody that can help me push that way. I think about just the number of times things have not gone well for him, and things have not been as successful as he hoped. And just to see how just like perseverant and just like, I'm going to do this. And even if it doesn't fall where I want it to fall, like I'm moving forward. And then, yeah, I look up to a lot of people and for a lot of specific aspects, but I think it's the combination of time, it's the combination of wit, it's the combination of perseverance, and being redeemed. I think that's the biggest push. Like, I love people that have got a messy story. People with a messy story have made life so much more interesting, and they're trying to figure it out. They're vulnerable. They admit they don't know everything, but they're having fun. And I think they are thoughtful about the way they approach life.
Non-judgmental.
Yeah. You want people that will make you feel safe.
Yes.
That'll affirm you, that'll allow you to be you. I think about one of my friends, particularly like, man, like I feel super safe when I talk to him about stuff and I don't feel judged. But he'll let me talk crazy, and then he'll reel me back in and say, all right, now that you've talked crazy, let's be real about this. And I think you want people like that. And one of the things, again, someone that gives of his time. Gifts are great. Sharing a meal is a lot of fun, but people that give you their time, I mean, you can't ask for someone to be less. You can't ask for someone to be less selfish than if they're just generous with their time.
Agree. Thank you, Michael. Before we finish, there is a question. There is not a question, but common question. When you approached me to do this podcast, I think one of the things that was of concern to you was how much we were losing a presence in the engineering field, right? The younger generation in general, but specifically African-American people of color.
Yeah.
And even those who had actually gone to engineering school succeeded, eventually switched career. They decided to do something else. I think that was one of the reasons you approached me. So I think that's what you're concerned about, your community, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Tell me more about that and what you hope to accomplish with this podcast.
Yeah, sure. There are so many. The whole reason this podcast is named Gears in Motion is our minds are constantly churning. And oftentimes we get the output, we get the results, but we don't get the gears. We don't get the churning. We don't see how the sausage is made. We don't see how people's thought process and journey and progress. You think about a car that rolls off the line. A car rolls off the line, and you say, that's a beautiful masterpiece. It's craftsmanship. But you don't see the failures. You don't see the oil puddles that were on the floor. You don't see the late nights and the sweat and the tears and sometimes the blood that it took to get to that place. And I think this podcast allows us to share a little bit of that and to not be afraid to get greasy and grimy. You're from the Motor City, right? You understand what it means to get gritty, greasy, grimy. And hustling, like Ford, Chrysler, Stellantis now, Ford, General Motors. They didn't get there and become great, and it just was a one and done job, and their hands were clean. Their hands were dirty, and oftentimes our hands have to get dirty to get what we're after. And I think that's oftentimes a challenge. And I think sometimes it happens so much in the mind before you even get words out of your mouth or actions, before you make a wrong move or think you're making the right move. And so I think this podcast allows us to touch at that and to be able to share in a way that is helpful and a way that's encouraging and a way that hopefully helps folks to understand who they are and to do what they've been destined to do their life's work and to do it well. And I think at the end of the day, it's good, Regine, if you and I have done our work well, but it's great when others have done their work well as well. And I think that's what we're after, right? We're not after one and done. We're after creating a pipeline. And I think that's the aspiration. That's the hope.
This is Regine.
This is Michael.
Until next time.